In this video we're going to be talking about the Tamiya Midnight Pumpkin, or to be more accurate, Midnight Pumpkin for Cindy. There we go, says it right there. So this is a slightly modified Midnight Pumpkin. It's a re-re, it's not an original 80s one, but these are spot on similar, very similar to the originals. And this is obviously what they call now the black edition, whereas in the 80s 90s, up until they brought out the chrome edition, it was just the Midnight Pumpkin. Personally, I prefer this original black edition. I think the chrome can look a little bit chintzy, but you know, it's nice. I'm going to get one in my collection, but you know, this was what I chose first. So we're going to have a little run through of some of the modifications I've got on this. Obviously it's the same chassis and everything as the lunchbox, but I've got a lunchbox which is a little bit more modified than this, so I thought this is a good place to start, just to explain some basic mods and how they relate to the performance and the longevity of the car. Also, I have a picture from back in the old days when, if you remember, when monster trucks were a big thing. You know, with Bigfoot and Gravedigger and all that. So I've got a picture on here of perhaps where the inspiration for the Midnight Pumpkin came from. I'm going to put that picture up at the end of the video, and I think you'll recognise where that inspiration came from. So let's get into the small amount of modifications I've got on this car. So this is another fairly straightforward build for anyone, you know, for anyone who maybe their first car, who prefers the monster truck style than the buggy style. I'd put it on par with the build of, say, a Hornet, possibly slightly more complicated than Grasshopper, but not a lot. It's actually got some similarities with the Grasshopper and the Hornet. As the shell doesn't need painting on this, it's just the decals, and the chassis is very simple build. In actual fact, the axle and gearbox and everything is the same as the Grasshopper and the Hornet. So yeah, that keeps it very straightforward. And the tub chassis it's all there with all the mounting points. Instructions are easy to follow, as usually is with Tamiya. So the modifications I have on this one, obviously the full bearing kit, gearbox and wheels, that has to be done. I've also got oil shocks on this one. The original shocks are like pogo shocks. They're very, very crude. They work fine. They're brilliant actually. It's a great fun truck. It's never going to handle brilliantly. It's a great truck. There's also a choice of some CVA short shocks for the Midnight Pumpkin and the lunchbox, which do lower the ride height, you know, give it some decent suspension, but I didn't want to kill the character of it too much. So I got some oil shocks, aluminium adjustable oil shocks on this, again from JKRC. These were quite cheap. I think they were about 15 quid, 20 quid, something like that. So they were a worthwhile mod. They don't do a hell of a lot to improve it, but they look quite nice, and they are higher quality than the standard. The motor I've got in it is, usually it comes standard as a Silver Can 540. In this I've just got a torque tuned. You can go higher, you can go a lot higher on these depending on what other mods you want to do to it, but I find the torque tuned is, yeah, again, like the Grasshopper, it's a pretty sweet spot in these. And I'm assuming if you run lipo batteries on it, lipo, however you want to say it, it will be quite lively. But it's lively enough with that, it wheelies all over the place, and yeah, it's a good bit of fun. And then apart from that, the only modifications I can think I've done on this is the aluminium wheel hubs, which again, they don't do anything performance wise, but they look nice. And when I've had vintage buggies before and vintage trucks before, those parts do actually get quite dried out over time, quite brittle, so they do snap. So the aluminium ones are a nice touch. Apart from that, I've run this one, so some of the stickerage is coming off, but got the tyre decals, the Bridgestone tyre decals, which liven it up a little bit. Yeah, I think it looks quite nice like that. So a characteristic I see people mention when they build the Midnight Pumpkin or the Lunchbox is they worry about, have I set up the front suspension correctly? Because it tends to, not so much on this because I've got the oil shocks on it, but they tend to sort of comically cave in. I wouldn't worry about that because I like that look on Midnight Pumpkin, and it is how they come out. You know, they're not perfect, but they are perfect. The character is perfect. So just a little 360 view of the Midnight Pumpkin. Lovely cars, really good fun, and a really straightforward build. Kids love these, but so do grown-ups. They're good fun. They handle well. They take quite a they can take quite a pounding. Obviously, on the Riri, you have the Tamiya sticker on the back rather than Ford. That goes into all the copyrights and the licensing from Tamiya. That's another story completely. That happens on quite a few cars. We have the wheelie bar to stop it flipping, but it does still flip sometimes. I'm probably going to do a few more modifications on this one. I'm going to put an axle brace on it. I've got one on the Lunchbox, and I'll do another video on the Lunchbox because I wouldn't say it's highly modified, but it's definitely more mods on it. So yeah, and I'll probably do a running video on this at some point. I might even already have one actually, I can find. But so yeah, these are fun cars. Definitely a good one to add to the collection. Like I say, I shall go into the modifications more when I go into the Lunchbox, and also keep an eye out for the picture that I'm going to put up at the end of the original full-size monster truck, which isn't a Midnight Pumpkin. Tamiya never said they modelled the Midnight Pumpkin on it, but you'll see exactly where I'm coming from, and it's called Frankenstein. So if you want to see that in action, there's some good videos on YouTube of the classic monster truck racing. Big old beasts, good fun. So yeah, check them out. So if you have any questions, again, stick them in the comments. Please like and subscribe, and yeah, I'll do some follow-up videos, and I'll also start introducing you to these little fellas soon as well. But I've got quite a few of them. That's going to be a different video completely. Obviously, they're not radio controlled, but they do move under their own power. 2 AA batteries. So we will go into them at some point. But like I say, I'm going to try and research that one a little bit better. Okay, yeah. So thank you for watching. Keep an eye out for the Lunchbox video, which will be next. And you enjoy the rest of your day. Take care. Thank you very much.